I've already filmed this video, or I thought I did, but I forgot to hit record again. I did that recently. I did it again. I'm mad at myself. So my bookshelves are a mess because I already pulled all these books off the shelf the first time I tried to do this video. I'm not gonna put my shelves back together just so I can tear them apart again. So apologies that it's not pretty here, but we have a lot of books to talk about. As the months go on, we are moving into spring and summer, at least in my part of the world. Things are warming up, and for me, I really love, especially lately, I love to read books according to what I'm doing in my life. So if I want to go on an adventure, I want to read an adventurous book. If I plan on spending time at the beach or, I don't know, by the sea, I want a nautical story. Or if I'm just gonna hang out in the sunshine, there are some really great books. So we're gonna break this video up into 3 categories. This whole video concept is books that will match the changing seasons, the sunshine. If you want to get out, get in the sun, read some books, maybe this will match some themes. I have an absolute ridiculous number of books on this list in these 3 categories, so I plan on giving you very brief descriptions of each of them, and if any of them sound interesting to you, you can check them out further, but there's a ton of books in this video, so hopefully you will find something that sounds interesting to you. As I said, we're breaking it up into 3 categories. We have adventure, sunshine, summer days, I don't know what to call it, just chilling in the sunshine. Contemporary feel good is what that category is. And nautical. I will have timestamps in the description if any of these don't sound interesting to you or sound extra, I don't know, live your life. There will be timestamps so you can jump around if you feel like it. We're gonna start with adventure because that's the one that I have the most egregious number of books for. So if this summer you hope to go on adventures near or far away from you, see the beauty of the world around you, here are some adventurous stories that you might enjoy reading too. Starting off with the most obvious and the most classic, The Lord of the Rings. You know what this is about, but I love this story. I've read it several times. I've read the trilogy or single book, however you view it, several times, and every time I go back to it, it's like coming home. Some people complain that the indulgent descriptions of landscape are too much. For me, they're just right because it makes the world so vivid. It makes me feel like I'm traveling with them. And I love this world and I love this story, and I'm really just not mad about how long it is. This book is full of a gorgeous world, of an exciting and terrible adventure, of characters that have to overcome extreme physical dangers and obstacles, as well as internal obstacles in order to get to where they need to go and accomplish what they need to accomplish. It's a story I probably don't have to describe to you, but it's an adventure that never gets old to me. Speaking of, if you love Lord of the Rings and you'd like to try some other things, we have the Wheel of Time series and the Ember Blade. I almost said an Ember Blade. Both of these are books and series that are heavily inspired by the Lord of the Rings and wear that inspiration on their sleeves. So if you love the Lord of the Rings and you'd like to continue in that style, in that feel, but with a distinctly its own twist, I feel like both these books do a good job of wearing their inspiration on their sleeve while also being distinctly their own. Next we have one of my all-time favorites, and that's The Count of Monte Cristo. This is a story of betrayal and of revenge. Our main character is betrayed, and we, the readers, have more information on it than he does. We have a more zoomed out perspective, so we see the betrayal, we know how it happened, and he doesn't understand what's happened to him when he's imprisoned. But after an admittedly long beginning, it is admittedly a slow start, but after we get past that beginning, the narrative shifts and our main character now knows more than we do, and he's now on this extreme adventure full of twists and turns, a thrilling ride that had me on the edge of my seat, always wondering what was gonna happen next, as well as a lot of introspection of who am I becoming in all this. It's such a thrilling and exciting and fun story with also a lot of really thought-provoking moments, and it is an adventure, admittedly a slow beginning, but once you get past that, an adventure that I never stop loving. I actually am long overdue for a reread and a proper long discussion for it, so that needs to happen. Next, I'm going to talk to you about Timeline. So this is a sci-fi adventure. This is about a group of archaeologists that actually find a medieval civilization, and because of reasons, they have access to a time machine and they go back in time to experience this medieval civilization. But as you might expect, things go wrong, and it moves from this Michael Crichton, I never have learned to say his name. Tell me in the comments if you know. This is a standard beginning for him where it's very slow and he's more focused on helping you to understand the concept that he's exploring. He's really focused on explaining the science, not even explaining the science, discussing the science. He does such a great job of having these lofty concepts but talking to me in a way that's both accessible but also doesn't feel like he's ever talking down to me. I love the way he handles this stuff. Anyway, it's a slow beginning, again, where he's really focused on discussing concepts so that once we get to the point, the inciting incident, he can just sprint. And that's what this book does. It begins with this sci-fi story that turns into truly a drama, an adventure, an absolute ride. Next, I have a nonfiction. It's called The Push, which is different from your standard adventure, but I think it counts. This follows a man named Tommy, who is a phenomenal rock climber. And so there's this mountain called El Capitan. It's a very iconic mountain for rock climbing, and he loves this mountain, but there's a specific wall that has never been climbed at the point of this story. It's practically glass. It's so smooth and is deemed unclimbable, but Tommy really wants to climb it, and it's called the Dawn Wall. He is the first person to ever climb this route, and there was a documentary made about it. It's called The Dawn Wall. Corey and I watched the documentary. We loved it, and I immediately just checked to see if he had a book because I'm a nerd, and he did. He wrote a book. It's called The Push, and it's fantastic. It takes you through his life as a kid, his obsession, his desire to continue to be better, huge setbacks he took, and him overcoming that and eventually conquering the Dawn Wall. It's phenomenal. I love it. It's not like probably the type of adventure that you initially think of, but it is a true story that is absolutely an adventure in its own right. Then we have Percy Jackson. So I actually have not finished this series. I read the first 4? And I enjoyed them, but I never finished, and I think that's largely because I tried reading this when I was exclusively reading adult fiction. And it wasn't really an intentional choice, it was just what I was into at the time. But lately, I've been dipping my toes back into middle grade, and I've really been enjoying it, and I just think that this is a story that I would absolutely jive with. I just wasn't in the right mindset to be reading it when I tried it before. So I've already started a reread of these books, and I'm planning on just blitzing through them. Anyway, this is an excellent adventure about gods and half-bloods and a boy named Percy Jackson, whose father is a god. He's a half-blood, but he doesn't know who his daddy is, and he goes to Camp Half-Blood, which is a camp meant to protect and train up people who have god blood in them. And because they are, with them being half gods, half-bloods, there are monsters in the world that specifically target them, so they need to be able to defend themselves, plus their quests, plus their friendships, plus it's just fun. It's just a fun time. And I'm really excited to be back into it. An absolute adventure. Would also fit in the Nautical technically, but you know, what are you gonna do? Now we have Kings of the Wyld, which is a lighthearted, fun adventure. This is kind of like a D&D campaign. This is a group of men who are absolute legends. They have conquered so much. They've defeated so many monsters of their world, and they are a well-known band of men, and they've disbanded at this point because they're old and they've settled down and lived lives. And you know, now one of the main characters, his daughter, is in peril, and so he tries to get the band back together and go and rescue her. So the book begins with this group of old, kind of washed up men who used to be legends, who are getting back together and stumbling their way through this adventure to go and save Rose. This wasn't perfectly suited for me because this lighthearted adventure isn't super my taste, but despite it not being the type of thing that I normally read, I had such a fun time reading it. I laughed out loud so many times. It was just a lot of action, a lot of humor, and surprising amount of character depth and moments that actually had me like teary-eyed. I do think that this is a story that a lot of people would enjoy. I forgot to mention, I'm also going to have, for each of these categories, I'm going to have 2 books that are on my want to read list that fit into these categories. So for adventure, the 2 books that I am really excited to get to. Next we have Nevermore, which is a middle grade that I love. I've read the first 2. There are 3 out and there will be 4 total. This is about a girl named Morrigan who is cursed. She's bad luck. Everybody around her, bad things happen to them, and nobody really likes her because of it. She's also destined to die on her 11th birthday. But on her 11th birthday, when she should die, this man named Jupiter shows up, who's the best. He shows up, kind of whisks her away to this magical world. I mean, it's all magical really, but this other world where she finds family, finds a home, and also has to compete in extremely dangerous trials in order to be accepted and allowed to stay here. This is absolutely an adventure, and it's an adventure of finding herself, finding her family, as well as going through these such fun trials. Book 2 also, she has to encounter a lot of things, and it's just an adventure. It's just an adventurous, fun story. And finally, we have Hunter x Hunter, which is a story about a boy whose father is a hunter, which is the most prestigious thing that you could be, and basically impossible to become one, but he is one, and he's not in his son's life because of it. So our main character, Gon, is, once he gets to an age where he goes on an adventure of sorts to participate in the Hunter x Hunter trials, try to become a hunter himself, try to figure out where his dad is, and makes friends along the way, learns more about himself along the way. Going through the different trials, facing the different obstacles, facing off against one of the most disturbing men I have ever met, has been a blast to read. I'm not done with it. I'm currently reading this. One is called Son of Storm. So this follows a man who is training to be a scholar, or he's already a scholar. I don't know, I haven't read it. And but he's not really interested in this future for himself. He's actually really fixated on the myths and the lore of what is outside of their walls. But he has been expressly told, you don't get to pursue that. But then he stumbles on something mythical. Who knows? I haven't read it. That kind of makes him stumble into leaving the barriers of his kingdom, being outside of the walls, and discovering what is beyond his walls, which this discovery could lead to the downfall of his kingdom. Whoops. It just sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm really excited to read it. Also, the other series that I'm really excited for is it's a manga series, and I'm not positive that I know how to pronounce it. Kokou no Hito. This is another rock climbing story. If you don't know, I grew up rock climbing with my dad. I love rock climbing so much. So anyway, this is another rock climbing story. This is a story about a man who is climbing and hiking and just kind of being in the beauty of the world. It's a very introspective story. I think it's a really emotional story. Again, I don't know, I haven't read it, but the panels that have been shared with me are absolutely stunning. The artwork is gorgeous, and with it being about a topic that I love, with it being very introspective and thoughtful, which is something that I love, and with it being so beautiful, I'm really, really excited to get to this one. Now we're going to go into Sunshine. I don't really know what to call this category. Just like feel good stories, contemporaries. We'll start with Little Women, which is a story about family and sisterhood and finding yourself. It's a story, I read this several years ago, so I might be a little bit foggy, but it's a story about these sisters who are so loyal to each other and love each other so much, and they go through their individual trials that both brings them closer together and really helps them to discover who they are. Like I said, I read this years ago and really am due for a reread and due for continuing on with the series. If you don't know, these books right here, whoops, are the rest of my Little Women. These ones right here, these are my Jane Austen books, if you've ever been curious. Peter Pan is absolutely an adventure, but I left it off the list because, I don't know, I talk about it a lot. Anyway, Little Women, I'm absolutely due for a reread and to finish the series and to watch the adaptation. I still haven't done that. But I loved this story. It felt so cozy and sweet to me while I was reading it. I fell in love with these sisters, and I don't know, maybe I need to reread it this summer. People We Meet on Vacation, this is about two best friends who have always been extremely close, always gone on vacations together, always had the best time together, but they've had a bit of a rough time, and things aren't going well between them anymore. So our protagonist, Poppy, was that her name? Poppy, hey, good job. So Poppy, she's doing this last ditch effort to try to get her and her best friend Alex to go on vacation together again and to hopefully revive the friendship and get things back to how it's always been. But she invites him on this vacation, but everything just goes wrong. And so she's frantically trying to make everything all right and make things okay so that their friendship can survive. There's also a romance. It's cute. Next I have Persuasion, which is, I know the obvious answer if I'm going to talk about a Jane Austen is Pride and Prejudice because it's adorable and it's fantastic and there's a reason it's her most popular book. But bear with me, indulge me a little bit, because if I'm going to talk about a sweet summer read, I really think it's Persuasion. The thing is, Jane Austen writes a lot of different books, and there's a romance in all of her books, but they're not all romances. Like Emma is a comedy, and what is it called? Why can't I think of Northanger Abbey is, it's ironic. I mean, it's a gothic thriller of the time, but it's all like a big joke. It's really funny, actually. Anyway, she has a different tone to a lot of her books, even though they all have romance in them. They're doing different things. But she does have a couple of books that are strictly romance, and as far as those go, I think Persuasion is just such a feel-good, sweet story. And if you're looking for just a sweet, classic romance to read in the warm summer months, I think Persuasion is it. I mean, Pride and Prejudice, you can never go wrong, and really you can't go wrong with any of her books in my opinion, but I really recommend Persuasion. Next I have A Psalm of the Wyld. So this is a really hopeful sci-fi book. It is about we follow two characters. We follow Dex, who is a tea monk, and this world is, so the setting of this world is that AIs they were used in factories, but they have now gained enough intelligence that they have decided to leave the factories and in fact go live by themselves in the trees, in the forest. And the people said, good for you. We're happy for you that you've gained this intelligence. We will adjust. And the world is just, so it's a very introspective book. It's a very philosophical book. Dex and Moscap, which is the wonderful robot that we interact with, they travel together through the trees and interact and talk, and that's kind of what the story is. But the reason I recommend this is because this is such a vivid world. The nature that's described in this book is just so immersive and beautiful. Being in the trees and in this lush environment is just, you kind of step into the book. And it's also a very, I mean, it's a novella, it's short, but it's a very feel-good novella. On that note, let's talk about The Secret Garden. This follows a girl named Mary who is terrible, just truly terrible. She's the worst. But then terrible things happen to her, and because of that, she is moved to Yorkshire, where she lives with some family, uncle maybe? I don't remember, in his manor, and in all that, she ends up spending a lot of time playing outside and a lot of time in this secret garden that has been locked off and hidden away. She finds it and she spends so much time in this book just tending to her garden, just pulling back the weeds and giving the roses a chance to grow again, and planting seeds and tilling the ground and just working in this garden. And I know it sounds boring, but this book it spends such a huge amount of time just describing this secret garden in such beautiful detail. And it's this weird book where it totally has plot. It definitely has plot. But I would like less, please. And I would like just the whole book to be nothing but descriptions of Mary working in the garden. Mary and Dickens, actually. I need him to work in the garden too because I love his character. But these two characters, let's just have them spend an entire book, more time than was spent, just tending to the garden, because it was just the most lush, beautiful, gorgeous descriptions that I never tired of. And I actually, when I finished this book, I told Corey, if someday we happen to have just a lot of money, I would love to have my own secret garden, because I wanted to step into this book, and if I could have my own secret garden, I would be so happy, even though I don't have a green thumb, so it would be a terrible investment. An oldie but a goodie is On the Fence, which is something that I have not read in years and probably shouldn't reread because I don't want it to be spoiled for me. But this is a story that I loved growing up. It's a YA story, it takes place in the summer, following this girl who has this amazing family dynamic with her brothers and with her dad and the boy next door, who is basically a part of her family. It's a romance, but it's also her kind of discovering herself and coming into her own and finding her own personality amidst all these other personalities that she loves and has grown up with, as well as her mom passed away, and she's also dealing with the grief and trying to sort through her feelings and all that. Next we have Anne of Green Gables, which you probably don't need a description for. Anne, very much like Mary, is just constantly in the sun, running through trees, exploring nature, always on an adventure. She's also finding her family and finding her place in the world, and it's just such a feel-good book. I don't think it actually takes place in the summer, much like Little Women, but it just, yeah, no, because she definitely goes to school for part of this book. But it's just such a feel-good, wholesome story that I definitely think is, if you haven't read it, you should read it this summer. Final book on this list is also not technically a summer book. It's called A Silent Voice. It's a manga series. It's very short, and it really focuses on bullying, which is not a feel-good topic, but it is a feel-good story in that the way it's written, it's so quick to read, and it's so focused on the characters and on the growth of those characters, but it also has very intentional discussions throughout it. So we start off seeing bullying happening with especially one of our characters, and it's terrible. It's so hard to read. But then we kind of get a time skip where now we're seeing the characters as they're older, and it's a really big focus on characters changing and growing, but as well as the way something like this doesn't just go away when the situation is over, how this sort of pain really sticks with a person and affects them long term. And it's a very short series, but it's such an impactful one. Finally, I want to talk about two series that I want to read that fit this vibe. The first one is Beach Read, which is the same author who wrote People We Meet on Vacation. It's probably her more popular book, and tons of people love it, and it's obviously very beachy. I think it's about two writers. She's a romance writer, he's a literary fiction writer. They're both snobby and don't like each other's genre, but they also both have writer's block, so they swap and they try to write a book in each other's genre thinking that they can do better, because I don't know, why would you think that? Anyway, so it's romance, they fall in love. The other series that I want to read soon is Fruits Basket, which I own the first, I think, 6 volumes of. And after I finish Hunter x Hunter, it's probably what I'm going to read next. Either that or Spy Family. Spy Family, the adaptation just came out and a bunch of people are talking about it. And I don't know, it's making me really want to read it. So either Fruits Basket or Spy Family. I'm definitely going to read one of them next. But anyway, Fruits Basket, I'm pretty sure, is a romance, and I'm pretty sure fits this theme. But what do I know? I haven't read it. Finally, we're going to end on nautical books. And the reason I'm ending here is because a lot of these books I've talked about a lot or recently, because nautical books happen to be a really niche, maritime, nautical, seaside books happen to be a really niche thing that I'm just obsessed with. So you've probably heard about all of these, or at least most of these. So I'll get through them quickly, hopefully. First one is going to be One Piece. Maybe you've heard me talk about it. I'm a little bit obsessed with it at the moment. It's the story about a boy who goes on an adventure at the sea, collects his friends, and he's on a quest to become the Pirate King. But along the way, he's also encountering a lot of different people, liberating a lot of people. He's just fantastic. I actually have a video coming out soon called Why I Love One Piece, and it is going to be a spoiler-free discussion talking about why this series has impacted me so much and why I love it as much as I do. But another manga series that I talk about a little bit less aggressively is Mermaid Saga, I actually just read this last week, the week before. Who knows when this video is going up, actually. This is a manga series that I just read recently, and it's only 2 volumes, and it's a collection of short stories, but it's cohesive enough that it flows really nicely. We follow these 2 characters who, okay, so the baseline information you need to know is if you eat of mermaid flesh, one of 3 things will happen to you. 1, you will become immortal. Woohoo. 2, you will die. Sad. Or 3, you'll become a monster or one of the lost souls. Also not ideal. You don't know which one's gonna happen to you. You're probably not gonna gain immortality, but we happen to follow 2 people who have. However, we also have the woes of being immortal, which is, you know, people grow old and die and you are left behind over and over and over again. So these 2 people are actually they're on a quest, they're on a journey, they're on an adventure to find a mermaid so that they can figure out how to gain their mortality back. Because their goal isn't to die. You can die in this immortal state, so it's kind of low-key immortal. You can die, but that's not what they're looking for. They're just looking to gain their mortality back. They just want to grow old and die organically. So on this quest that they're on, as they're traveling from town to town and encountering different people and different situations, they continue to encounter people who have been affected by mermaids in one way or another. There's not enough mermaids in this story. There's not enough actual physical mermaids in this story, but beyond that, I had such a great time reading it. It's just a really engaging, addictive, slightly dark, but not too bad story that I couldn't stop reading. I actually read both of these, I think, in a day each, which isn't normal for me. And I just couldn't stop reading them. And if there was another volume, I would read another volume, even though I do think that it ended not in a good spot, but at a good time, if that makes sense. But anyway, it's quick, so I think it's worth the read. Next story I have is Frenchman's Creek, which is one that I don't necessarily recommend to most people because it's just such a specific kind of thing, but it's my specific. The main character isn't someone that I necessarily like, someone that I definitely don't agree with pretty much any of her choices, but what Daphne du Maurier never fails at is creating an atmosphere that I get to step into. And if you have watched this whole video, you've probably heard me talk about it enough. Atmosphere and environment, really immersive environmental writing is something that I just love so much. And I have not found an author that can create an atmosphere like Daphne du Maurier can. She can write a story in a way that makes me step into it unlike anyone else can. And in this story, there is a woman who makes all the wrong choices, there are pirates that secretly dock in her area, and she encounters them, interacts with them, goes on adventures with them. And I don't know, I've never felt so much like I'm on a pirate adventure than I have in this. And it's a romance, so like don't let me detract you. It's not an adventure, it is a romance. But I was there with her. I was on the boat with her. I was doing what she was doing, even though I disagreed with everything she was doing. I was doing it all too. And I was just a part of this story, and I just love it. Next we have Treasure Island, which would absolutely fit in the adventure category. It is an adventure story, but it's also nautical, so here we are. This follows a boy who is I think his family runs the inn. Anyway, he encounters pirates for the first time in an inn, and then because of a series of circumstances, he is now with the pirates. And again, this is such an immersive setting. I felt like I was there. I was on the island with them. I was at sea with them. I was in the middle of these fights with them. And Treasure Island, you probably don't need me to describe it because it's so seeped into our culture, well, at least mine, that you can't really escape it fully. But I really wasn't spoiled for very much in this story. I was spoiled for some things, but I wasn't spoiled for very much in this story. And if you can enter the story that way, oh my goodness, this is so full of twists and turns and incredible battles and wondering who is truly an ally and what characters are gonna do next. And it is an adventure to its core, but it's also a sea-hardy adventure, and it's so immersive, and I felt like I was there, and it's so much fun. Next we have House of Salt and Sorrow, which is another recent read for me. This is a story following a girl who's one of 12 sisters, And there's a curse on their family, quote unquote, there's a curse on their family that is making the sisters die off one by one in a series of different ways. And some of the sisters believe this curse, some of the sisters don't. But the point is, they're sad because they keep dying. Anyway, this is also a very environmental seaside story. It's, oh man, it's just a fun time. It's not like the most well-constructed or brilliantly crafted plot, but if you can go in just expecting a good time, it is that. It's spooky, it's dark, there are hauntings, there are characters that you don't know if you can trust or not. There's gods and interventions and, it's just a wild ride, but it's also so environmental and cozy and exciting and spooky and strange and wild. And I don't know, I just had a really, really fun time reading it. Next, I have On Stranger Tides, which is what I believe the Pirates of the Caribbean movies was based off of, or at least inspired by. This follows a man who was once a puppeteer, and his father was betrayed and sort of kind of killed by his uncle. So this man, Chadignac, is on a quest for revenge. I love a good revenge plot, but he's also accidentally gets in line with some pirates and then becomes an essential part of the crew. Blackbeard is here. Also, I think that this is, I don't know, the magic in this world is just so tangible. It's written as a historical sort of setting, and it's written to be Old English, or like old times in England, but it feels like the magic is real. It feels like it was always meant to be there. It just feels so at your fingertips. And I just really, really loved that about this story. It was an action-packed, it definitely fits in the adventure category as well. It was an action-packed adventure of pirates and of voodoo and of wild, wild times. Next, I have Red Seas Under Red Skies, which is book 2 of the Gentleman Bastard series. A lot of people don't like this book because it's basically a side tangent, and it is, fair enough, but it's the best side tangent. I love this story, I love this world, I love Scott Lynch's writing, I love these characters, and in this story they are blackmailed to be pirates for hire, and it really does feel like you have book 1, which is brilliant and masterful, then you have book 2, which is kind of a side tangent but also brilliant and masterful, and then you have book 3, which it's like, how are these don't connect super well, and fair enough, but I don't really care. I'm having a great time. These are my favorite characters by one of my favorite writers in one of my favorite worlds. Pirates. Like, I couldn't be happier. You do have to read book 1, which is very much not a nautical story, in order to get to book 2, but I mean, you should, because it's my favorite series, other than One Piece. This is my favorite novel series, One Piece is my favorite manga series. Finally, we will finish this section with 2 books that I want to read that fit into this category. The first one is Pirate Hunters, which I read another book by this author called Shadow Divers. It was about divers, deep sea divers, and the dangers and woes and excitements of being a deep sea diver. And Pirate Hunters is actually a more focused story, specifically about them trying to find a sunken pirate ship of one of the most notorious pirates in history. And they encounter a lot of roadblocks. They really struggle to be able to pinpoint where it is. Deep sea diving is very difficult and very dangerous. And it's their story. It's the author and his friend, I think, their story of trying to find this notorious pirate ship that has sunk. I'm really excited about it. I just downloaded it on Audible. I'm not sure if I'll get to it right away, but I definitely want to read it soon. And then we also have Captain Blood, which is also a classic pirate story. I don't really know much about it. I try not to go into books knowing a lot because I don't want expectations. I just want to try to love something that I read. But Pirate Blood is another classic pirate story that I definitely want to get my hands on soon. So there you go. That is an absolutely absurd list of summer-y or warm weather-y adventure-y stories. Hopefully, in this huge list of books, you have found at least one thing you want to read and could enjoy. If not, I quit. But everything on this list are books that I have enjoyed and do recommend, and I hope that you'll like them too. So if you have any books that you would like to recommend in any of these categories, please do. If any of these books look interesting to you or you've read and you want to discuss them further, please do. I post videos every Monday and Friday at the moment, but as of May, I will start posting Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Plus, I have my second channel where I post reading vlogs every Thursday. Might start doing some video essays that I'm pretty excited about if I can find the time. That's all in the description. See you again soon. Bye.